and welcome to our special series of Salubrious Skin with Dr. Irene podcast, The Wellness Revival. Today I'm joined by a regular guest of the podcast who has shared such great wisdom with us over the last few years. I've been hosting this podcast. Our topic today is all about mindset, and I know you're probably rolling your eyes thinking, oh, I've all heard it all before, but trust me, you are in for a treat. I really want to talk about how we function day to day in a state of fear. And especially with Australia burning right now, we're feeling a little loss of faith in the government, potentially fear around what's going to be next and how these communities are going to rebuild. And so I want to talk about how we can break free from fear, especially if it's been ingrained in us from a very young age, and how we can return to a sense of being present and trusting everything will be okay. So Cheryne is a passionate life coach, a meditation teacher, and the host of Peace in My Pocket meditation podcast. Cheryne specializes in stress management and self-empowerment to help her clients achieve calm, clarity, and confident courage by managing and dissolving stressful thoughts and emotions. Cheryne's also recently authored a book, which we'll talk about shortly. So welcome, Cheryne, to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
It's so
in
great.
2020.
2020, how exciting. And we're talking a little bit before we started, this episode. And I know that, the listeners will be really surprised with what we're going to talk about. Because I think when you talk about mindset, I think it's such a common phrase used that people have lost the essence of what it means. And by doing that, we can sometimes forget about actually using that sense of presence and all that sort of thing. So I'm happy for you to just sort of take the ropes and go your way, because this is your area of expertise. This is what you do day to day with your clients. This is what you talk about. This is how you live by your life as well. So what would you encourage people to do if so the Wellness Revival is really centered around people who are wanting to create change for them in 2020. Mm-hmm. And it can be in all areas of your life. It can be in nutrition. It can be in fitness. It can be in having healthier relationships. It can be in career. Whatever a person wants to create that shift to reflect upon 2020 and say, you know what, I really took the steps towards reaching that personal goal of mine. How do you go about getting that ball rolling, I guess?
Okay, fantastic. Big question. I'll just break it down a little bit, because obviously this is the time of year where we're all kind of setting New Year's resolutions and, what do we want to achieve this year? And, like you said, there's a few pieces that you said in there about how do we do things from a space of faith and from a space of authenticity rather than fear. So if we look at, first of all, one of the things that I'm loving about this decade and this new year is the idea of 2020 vision. And if we kind of just use that as a little bit of a metaphor, that, we can use this time as gaining real clarity around who we want to be and how we can do things differently rather than kind of repeating the same. And, one of the things that you hear me say in all the podcasts that we do is that it all starts with self-awareness. So the first step is really about understanding who we are, what are our passions, and what are the patterns that are, happening in the subconscious mind and happening below the surface. Why do we have those patterns running? And how can we really reprogram those patterns with awareness? So if we think about mindset is about our attitude, right? Mindset is the attitude and the thought processes and the story that we are making about a situation. So it all starts there, and it starts with an understanding of, like I said, that awareness. Who am I? And what story do I want to create? And that's a really beautiful place to start, in the sense that we can see this year as a blank canvas.
So would you encourage someone, before they've actually established any type of I guess 2020 vision as to what they want to accomplish, whether it's this year or in the next 10 years. Is it really important to reflect upon what the last year or what the last decade has meant for them,
Yeah.
and perhaps what they have learned and where they want to potentially go? Because I think sometimes I hear this a lot in clinic, and even though we're talking about people's health, whether it's headaches or fertility or skin problems, it all comes back to people just being happy within themselves and where they're at. And
Yeah.
I always seem to have a conversation around people feeling lost, and I think that's really fabricated by the sense of reflection or the lack of reflection.
Yeah. And I think a sense of lost it comes down to what I refer to as a disconnection from self, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
And so let's break down some steps for ourselves to make this a little bit simpler for people. I think the best place to start is to really start in a space of, you know, like Stephen Covey said, let's start with the end in mind. Right. And you know, what I'd like to ask you and ask everybody that's listening is to really think about not so much of the outcomes that you want to achieve, like lose the weight, get healthy, get a new job, get a relationship, buy a new house, whatever those goals may be. I want you to think more around, what is it that you want to feel?
Okay.
You know, what is it that you really want to feel every single day in yourself? And those are the values, right? So rather than focus on like the goal, which is, you know, kind of like the journey to the destination, the values are our destination. Why do we want this? What is really important to us?
Okay.
So for example, it would maybe, you know what, I want to have more energy. I want to have vitality. I want to have, you know, more energy to be my purpose. I want to have more social outings. I want, you know, so as you can see, these are the values, the end goal that I want to kind of see present in my life.
Okay.
And once we really have an understanding about that, then we can come back and go, okay, how do I map myself there? How do I really map myself there? So what I suggest is to do a little bit of a mind map and just a kind of mind dump, and just do some journaling around, just jot down some feelings that you want to feel. So for example, I want to feel happy. I want to feel purposeful. I want to feel calm. I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel grounded. You know, I want to feel,
I think content sometimes, you know,
content.
yeah,
Yeah.
just peace. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's where
Peace.
a lot
Peace
of
is a
people
really
have a
big
lot of
one.
angst, you know, about
Yeah.
striving for this or striving for that. So even when they're striving for a goal, there's that anxiety around achieving it. So doing it from a
Yeah.
place of calm and I guess contentment, and knowing that it will
Yeah.
be achieved in the time it will be, is
Yeah.
something that makes the journey more enjoyable as opposed to
Yeah.
a nuisance.
Yeah, because see, this is what we have to understand the ego mind.
Mhm.
So, you know, in my book, and the book is called The Courage to Be You,
Do you have a copy
and
there so we
really,
can have a look
yes, I have a copy right here.
for
Let me
those
get it for
who are
you.
watching? The,
Here's a copy of the book, The
so it's
Courage to
called
Be You.
The Courage to Be You, Cheryne Blom. So where can people, while we're talking about that, where can people buy that if they
Well,
want
it's on Amazon, so they can order. If they can go to Amazon, they can look up
Yep.
The Courage to Be You, Cheryne Blom, on Amazon. They can go to my website. I'll put a link. I'll give you a link that they can go
Okay.
directly to the Amazon or to my website. But
Okay.
and if they're in Melbourne, they can get it direct from me. They want to save on shipping or whatever. I've got a few copies. But you know, the idea of the courage to be you is exactly what those words say, is that it is so hard to actually master being ourselves,
Yeah.
right? To actually master that authentic self. And so when we set ourselves goals and we say, I want to lose weight, what we don't realize is we have this ego mind, right? And our ego mind, like you said, we don't realize that we're functioning from fear. So the ego mind is something that's created in childhood.
Mhm.
And it's that story of separation that happens very young within us. So something happens to us. So it could be something as simple as a parent yells at us, or kids laugh at us in class, or a teacher scolds us and we feel embarrassed, or we feel rejected, or we feel abandoned. Those are the wounds, the emotional wounds that the body feels. And from the wound, the mind creates a decision, which is normally 3 fears. I'll bring my fingers into the frame, right? 3 fears that I realized in all my coaching sessions, it always came back to these 3 fears. And we don't even realize that these 3 fears are driving us. So the 3 fears: I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, I'm not worthy.
Okay.
Yeah. And very often, sometimes it will come down to all of those.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I'm
So
not worthy
loved.
or good enough to be loved.
So what was that? I'm not loved. I'm not good enough.
I'm not worthy.
I'm
Yeah.
not worthy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we
And
don't
so
realize we make
that
this.
recorder keeps going over and over, doesn't it? In every aspect of your life, and it keeps.
Well, if you can imagine a meteorite hitting Earth, right? So a meteorite hits Earth and it's made this indentation.
Yeah.
Right? That's the imprinted mind. Right? So what happens is, if you can imagine, like, a young child has no belief system, right? We're experiencing everything for the first time.
Yeah.
Right? So every time we experience every first emotion, it's like that meteorite. It just goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so these are the imprint beliefs that mark us. And so the mind decides that is embarrassment, and I don't want that to happen. And that made me, what people laughed at me, and what's wrong with me, and why am I different to people? And the story starts, right? And we develop this personality to protect us from those feelings, right? So, for example, I'm going to be a little bit introverted, or I'm going to be shy, and I'm not going to stand up and talk, because when I do, people laugh at me.
Yeah.
So we start to make adaptations to our personality.
Yeah.
Right? To our essence, right? In the book, I talk about the ego and the essence, these 2 parts of ourselves that are sometimes at war, that we desperately need to bring together and integrate.
And so it really gets confusing as to what organically is you versus what your experience has created.
Yes.
And so then,
Yes.
because you always hear people say, I'm just introverted, or I don't like to socialize, it's just who I am. But I guess essentially it's really what occurred at some stage that created that behavior, and so people adapt it to be their persona, which isn't actually true.
Absolutely. So in every experience, you can see every experience as being neutral. In every experience, we perceive something, we made a decision. Perceive something, made a decision.
Right.
And that decision became our belief system, becomes the inner story. And why this is so important with what we're talking about is that it comes down to what I was saying before, your intention. Because if we don't know that inner why, then what we don't realize is the inner why that's driving us, motivating our behavior, which is what psychology is all about, right? Understanding why we do what we do.
Yeah.
We don't realize that everything that we're doing is actually to make us feel good enough. It's a feedback loop, right? So everything's like, okay, so if you can imagine, I don't want to feel that wound or the pain. So therefore I need to be this way. I need to avoid that. I need to change this. And I need to have that. And it's this feedback loop. And we don't realize that we're proving ourselves. And we're building what I refer to in the book is the terms and conditions of our self-worth. So I'm worthy if I look a certain way. I'm worthy if I have certain things. I'm worthy if I'm do things for people, or if I get this positive result from people, or if I'm in a relationship, or if I have a house, or if I have money. This is the contract that we make with ourselves. Right? So the framework that we're seeing the world is through a lens of fear.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So that's where we have to be really careful. Why don't people achieve goals? Because ultimately, deep down inside, we don't feel worthy of them. Right? Yeah. Because we're trying to prove our worth. The intention is coming from, well, I'm not worthy. So if I lose weight, right? Do you know what I mean? So it's the self-sabotaging.
Yeah, I was exactly going to say that. Sometimes it's the self-sabotage that creates that continued sense of striving for this unattainable goal that people seem to just not necessarily do the right things in order for them to never achieve it. And then it's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm right, aren't I? I'm not worthy enough because I can't
Yeah.
even do this simple thing. So
Yeah.
it's almost like satisfying their initial belief, which was really not the truth. It was just what they perceived. I mean, you know, kids laughing, they could have been laughing just because they get nervous. You know, kids get
Yeah.
nervous. And someone speaks up and has this confidence, and they find it funny, not necessarily that it was wrong. So it's
Yeah.
so interesting. And having children as well now, you know, they've got my son, you look at life so differently because you do see them born so pure and, you know, without any belief system whatsoever. And yeah, it's incredible. But anyway, so so first of all, I guess, like you said, what do you want to feel by
Yeah.
the end of the goal, and then
Yeah.
connecting with where you're truly at as far as what you want to feel. Is that right?
Yeah. So the reason I'm saying that is because rather than making it about, this goal, and you don't realize the belief system that's driving you, make it about how you want to feel. And what
Mm,
that means is that we shift the whole mindset,
mm,
right? Because rather than proving ourselves, this is about just being ourselves, right? And what that means is that it's not about being worthy, it's about being your truth, being your true self. That's the courage to be you. So it's
mhm.
not about proving yourself, it's not about other people. It's about how do you return back to the essential nature that you were born as? How do you express your truth? So it's a matter of, okay, I need to weigh 65 kilos, right? Why do I need to weigh? Because that's when I feel my best, right? I feel my best. I can be my best. I have more energy. I have more clarity. I have more focus. I have more spiritual connection. I feel my best. That's my why, right? So it's not so much about the weight loss. It's how can I spiritually connect? How can I energize myself every day? How can I do something to feel my best?
So what steps can someone take? What would you recommend they need to do in order to, you know, take the courage to be their authentic self? What?
So one of the things that I love to do this time of year is, like I said before, you do this mind up of different feelings, right? And what you go to from there is choose one word,
Mhm.
right? Choose one word for the year. Okay, so like it may be, I want to feel focused, I want to feel energized, I want to feel um, it's about who you want to be,
Yeah,
right? So you want to think about your behavior and what's this. It's like, if you call it, I call it like a focus word,
yeah.
right? So for example,
So is that literally open to anything? So if someone says, I want to feel free, you know, freedom,
yeah,
or
freedom, I mean, look, that's a great one. That's a very big
yeah,
broad aspect, but that's fine as long as you define what you mean by freedom. So
okay,
somebody says, I want to be free. What does free mean? And I'm going to talk negative in the negative sense for a moment, but freedom means I feel no anxiety. I feel an inner peace. I feel uninhibited,
hmm,
right? So what does that mean if we break that down again?
so
Okay,
break it
that
down,
means
yeah.
that, so that means that, you know what? I'm actually going to start to communicate myself more.
Hmm.
I'm actually going to just really challenge myself to speak my truth,
Yeah,
right? So even if I'm like worried about things, I'm not going to worry about I'm going to be respectful and I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to be mean or nasty. I'm going to be respectful, but I'm going to assert myself,
hmm,
right? I'm not going to be the people pleaser, because the people pleaser belongs to that ego self that needs to feel liked and loved and
yeah,
worthy and good enough. So I'm going to speak my truth, right? So speaking my truth, every time I do that, actually helps me feel free,
yeah. Absolutely, it does.
right?
It takes
So
that weight off your
anxiety,
shoulders.
right? So can you see how what we're doing is we're taking the feeling and we're breaking it down into action steps,
Hmm.
right? So I don't want to feel anxiety. Okay. So what's the opposite of not feeling anxiety? I want to feel calm. What's something I can do that helps me feel calm? You know what? I'm going to meditate every morning. I'm just going to meditate, and I'm going to, every time I feel anxiety, I'm going to connect with my breath, and I'm just going to stop and I'm going to do 2 minutes of breathing. just 2 minutes of breathing, right? So now the goal is breathing, right? That's the action step. That's the habits that I need to build to feel more calm, that allows me to feel free,
Yeah.
right? So the habits that I build are breathing, letting go of emotion, letting go of attachments, letting go of negative self-talk, letting go of all that stuff, feeling calm, feeling free,
Yeah.
right? So my goal will be, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes every morning,
Yeah.
right? What
That's
I'm
very
actually trying to
attainable,
achieve
isn't
is
it?
free.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a process and of breaking it down, because so let's say somebody says, well, my goal is, I've heard so much about it, I'm going to meditate every morning, right? And they're meditating, but they don't have that clear why,
Yeah.
right? They're just going, I'm ticking a box,
Yeah.
right? And I'm doing what the doctor says, and I'm actually starting to feel more anxious,
Yeah.
right? Because you haven't shifted the mindset, the attitude. You haven't
Yeah.
created an intention, right?
Yeah.
Think of mindset as the energy that you put into something, right? So the mindset is a freedom mindset.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. And I think so many people have this belief that they should be meditating because obviously there's so much research around the benefits of meditating, but they shut it down because they're like, oh, I think even more, it stresses me out, I can't do it, within a minute I'm off thinking of all the list of things I need to do. And that's what you're saying, essentially, that disconnect as to their why they're doing it,
Yes.
as opposed
Yes.
to, again, that's something that society has told you you must do. And I think that really needs to be defined when choosing a goal, whatever it is that, are we doing what is making other people happy, or is it going to make myself happy? And I think that's really
Yeah.
the first thing. So if
Yeah.
you're listening and you're thinking, gosh, I need to scratch all my goals, absolutely. There's no time limit as to when anything needs to be achieved by. This is your own journey,
Yeah.
you're on your own path.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, so now we've got the goal in mind. Oh yeah.
And make it creative for yourself. Like, for example, I was telling you this before. So
Yeah.
one of the things, like how I work with my word is I look at my numerology for the year, I look at my astrology for the year, and that gives me insight into the life lessons that I'm working through. So like, for example, 2020 is a 4-year that's all about physical manifestation. It's a very, very powerful year. This year is really about setting us up. There's no more excuses. Numerology and astrology is supporting
what do you mean by
a
physical
4-year.
manifestation?
Well, the 4 means about groundedness. It's about goal setting. It's about following through.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the life lessons of the number 4. So the energy of this year is about follow through. And that's why we're seeing some really big things happening globally right now, because it's very much about literally change. And that can be very, very hard in the beginning. If we look at what's happening in Victoria, in Australia right now, we are literally going through this process right now of, I'm going to spin it in the positive, but a rebirth. And that's very hard to see right now in the chaos. But it's a clearing, and that's a very hard mindset to kind of embrace right now, but to understand that everything has a purpose.
Yeah.
And so it is about literally this manifestation of creating something new.
Yeah.
And we don't know what that looks like yet, but we know that that's what's going to come out of it.
Okay.
And that's, again, the mindset. It's an acceptance. It's a faith. It's a letting go. The fear mindset is resistance. It challenges things, and that just creates inner stress in us.
Okay.
Right? It's that story that we're making.
Yeah. So I want you to show everyone your personal chart, because that looks pretty amazing when you.
So
this is after you've done the mind map / mind dump. This is after you've done that. Is that correct? And then you follow through with something like this.
Yeah. So basically, like, the word that I got to for myself this year was mastery. Also knowing my numerology is a 7, so that's also about personal mastery. So really using everything.
Numerology as being 7.
So my birthday is the 5th of the 7th, 1972. So how you work out your personal year is you take your, so this year, 2020 is a 4. So how you work out your personal year number is you take the day that you were born plus the month that you were born plus the number 4. So
Right.
5
Okay.
plus 7 plus 4 gives me 16. Is that right?
Right.
And that's a number. And then you add those two together to get a single digit that gives you number 7.
Okay. Well, I did it very
Okay.
quickly because I'm the 5th of August, actually. So we're
Oh,
exactly one month
amazing.
different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then mine would be an 8.
Okay. Yeah. So
Is that
8,
right? So 5, 8
5
plus
plus 4.
4, 12, 12, 17. Yeah, 1 and
Yeah.
7 is 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, then I thought to myself, well, what's a symbol that symbolizes mastery to me? And I dumped out all these words that were important to me. And the symbol was a tree. So I kind of created this tree, obviously also symbolizing growth mindset. And, by growth mindset, I mean that resilient mindset that means we're always growing, right? It's that attitude of I'm not there yet, but I'm still growing. So I'm always growing, no matter how much work I've done, no matter what I've achieved, I am always growing like a tree. Thinking about some of these trees take 200 years to become who they are. And the resilience of a tree, which is also what we're seeing right now. But what I basically did is for me, it was like in the middle, that kind of yin yang. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
But which is at the heart of it, about balancing my masculine and feminine and understanding the difference between my masculine and feminine, which I've done on the two sides. These are more masculine traits. These are more feminine traits. And then all the branches represent the ways that I'm going to achieve this. So for example, being compassion and courage, taking responsibility, following through, coming from wisdom, expressing myself, my intuition, staying connected. And then I just kind of made myself some notes of how I do this, right? How I break those patterns. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another way of how I got there is if we go back to how we started this conversation. So number 1, we do the mind dump of all the feelings we want to feel. We choose one, we choose a focus word, right? We define that, do a symbol, think of the words that relate to it. Okay. Once you've done that and we've started with the outcome that we want to achieve, then go back a little bit and do a little bit of reflection around 2019. Maybe you even want to start at 2017, 18, 19. And which is kind of like the end of the decade. What was the cycle? What were the patterns? And I want you to start to reflect and say, well, number 1, what were the good things that happened, right? What am I celebrating? Like, what did I learn? What did I overcome? And what did I actually learn? Like, what are those lessons? What did I master in those years? And then as you look back, start to look at, and if you take 3 years, you can get a kind of consistent pattern. You can start to look at, what are the patterns that kept on happening where I sabotage things? What are the personality patterns, the behavioral patterns that I keep doing that keep tripping me up? The ones that are coming from the fear, right? Because we'll go a certain bit, we'll go good for a while, and then something will happen. It will trigger us into that negative place. And then it's like a domino effect. And then we have to pick ourselves up and go again. So we want to create that consistency. So once you've kind of identified those patterns, write them all out. And you can even do this like dividing a piece of paper. On the left, you write out the negative habit. And then on the right, you write out your antidote, like what you are turning that into, right? So for example, one of them may be self-doubt, right? So I'm going really good, but then I start downing myself, right? Start downing myself and the negative self-talk comes in, which is again, that fear under the cover, under the surface. So what's the antidote of that, right? Now you can say self-belief, but we have to be careful with those ones because the mind's going to play tricks with us, right? And we don't want to get into this resistance convinced-er pattern with our own heads, right? So self-doubt, what's the opposite, right? So yes, you can say self-belief, but for me, I took that a little bit further, and I said, that's about me staying focused, right? That's about me staying focused about what am I working towards, and breaking steps down and following through,
Yeah.
right? So self-doubt actually became about focus and follow through,
Yeah. And
right?
also when you're saying self-doubt, I'm thinking about staying present, because when you start thinking about all that negative stuff, it's
Yeah,
whether it's past experiences that you may have tried something similar and it didn't work, and it's what's the point?
yeah,
I've already tried and I failed, and that whole cycle of don't waste your time. You haven't done it properly from the
yeah,
first place. So I
yeah,
guess staying present and letting the past be in the past.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what we can start to do is we can start to create the be, do, have map for ourselves, right? So the focus word or the feeling that we're going to create. So for example, like what I said, my word is mastery or self-mastery or spiritual mastery that I'm referring to. That's my have. That's what I want to have this year. I want to have spiritual mastery.
Mm-hmm.
So once I've identified the negative patterns and I've created a positive pattern that I want to turn it to, that creates my be. So I want to be focused, right? What's the action of the being? So what's the doing of the being is follow through. So every time I'm focused and I follow through on what I've started, I will have self-mastery.
So the follow through are the
Is
goals
my action.
or the
So
actions for the
yes,
goals?
yes. So then I can break that down. So what do I need to follow through, right?
Right.
I need to finish this,
Yeah.
whatever. My
Yeah.
brain, I've got this crazy creative brain that I need to say to myself, this is a 5-year plan, right? So just making
Not a 5-month plan.
we all know those things that we've started and we haven't finished.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, that's something for myself. Like you may say present. Okay. So what's something that you can do as a habit that makes you feel more present?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that gives you your doing.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we start to piece together what we've done, we've started with the mind dump of all the words, right? We've found ourselves one word of focus. That's our have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We've now made a list looking back around what are the negative patterns that we've seen in ourselves. The celebration, we're going to just bank there for a while because that's the stuff we want to keep and we want to just reproduce. So the negative patterns, we're just listing out. And then on one side of a page, on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, we're writing the antidotes or what we want to be to dismiss or dissolve that negative.
Yeah.
Right? And then once we've identified the be, we want to say, okay, what do I have to do to be that? What are my daily action steps? What are my habits? What are the new patterns that I need to do to have what I want to have?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we take does that make sense? So if we take your idea of freedom before, I want to feel free.
Yeah.
Right. And then you've identified, well, I want to be more present.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what are the things that you're going to do to be more present? Because every time you do those, you're going to feel freedom, right?
Yeah. Two things that are on my list, and I've
Yep.
openly shared it, is getting back to my meditation daily.
Yep.
I really, and also reading. I used to, before my son was born, I would read for 20, 30 minutes every morning.
Yep.
And I've just struggled. Even I got up early this morning, got up 7 today. He got up about 8. I got up at 6:30 yesterday, and it was straight away, great, I've got an hour. What work can I get done?
Yep.
And instead of going, hang on, we need to set the foundation by doing your meditation, reading your book, and then whatever work you can get done, you get done. If not, you do it later in the
Yep.
day. So
Yep.
I always seem to take that time that I've got. I have got it, but I will straight away think, gosh, I've got to get onto this list. I've got a list of so many things
Okay.
that I can tick off, and then I will choose the list over this whole process of really.
So let me make it really simple for you. Anytime you find yourself in the gotta mind,
Yeah.
right? You are coming from fear.
Yeah.
Every single time you hear yourself say, I got to do this, I should do that, I have to do that, whatever that is,
which is
that is
multiple
your
times
ego.
a day. It's multiple times a day.
So when we spoke about that negative self that we don't realize is functioning and choosing our decisions, that's the default that we're going to go to because it's the imprint. right?
Yeah.
But why I've called the book The Courage to Be You is that now when you can see that gotta mind is your need to prove yourself and not feel like a failure and be blah, 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 whatever that is,
Yeah.
right? Then you can say, well, do I want to be that? Or do I want to be my true self? My true self feels freedom.
Yeah.
And the desire to feel freedom is so much greater than the need to prove myself to other people. So now I'm going to live my life on my terms. What is my life? It doesn't mean I got to do anything.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to wake up. I want to meditate. I want to be connected. I want to, establish a base, a foundation for the day. I want to be more present with my son, da, da, da. So now you're actually being your authentic self. And that's coming from a grounded calm rather than blah, 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 right? Because what we don't realize is if we're in this space all the time, this is where the illness breeds.
Yeah.
Right?
And
because we don't realize that fear.
I can do this in a very relaxed way. So I've got those duck feet pedaling under the water like crazy, and I can look as cool as a cucumber on the top, and have people have no idea. But it's that conversation in my mind that gets me into that state. Yeah.
And your body will remind you every now and then, right? Because we'll have flare-ups of illness, or we'll have the skin things, or we'll have whatever it comes to let us say, okay, you know what? That's what's happening inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's that inside that we want to be authentic, right? It's that feeling inside that we go, I'm just being me. And I'm making daily choices to be me. Now that doesn't mean I'm not going to work hard and I'm not going to do things, but I'm going to do it from a very grounded way that allows me to be the best version of myself rather than the one that's proving myself.
And there's more clarity around decision making and doing tasks when you are in that space versus the adrenaline gotta space. Yeah.
And so, we can start to look at things like procrastination, for example, and start to really understand it and go, okay, am I procrastinating right now? Is this subconscious fear?
Yeah.
And we can start to really deal with the issues that are happening within ourselves and transform ourselves. Because if we look at that and say, okay, I'm procrastinating, is this about fear? The mind will tell you no. But, we have to really be honest with ourselves and say, am I being focused? Am I being followed through? Am I doing my mastery? Well, anytime we see that we're not, we're going off par, right?
Yeah.
So this is about knowing what your values are, knowing what you're working towards, and really just creating a sustainable map that has no rules, but is your own truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So much value in
but
what
is
you just
expressing
said as far as being sustainable, and has to be sustainable. Not, so many people I see burning out. So it has to be sustainable. It has to be authentic to who you are.
Yeah. And, you can take something like what I've done there and just make it a lot simpler for yourself, in the sense of, just starting with your one word, like be, do, have, like freedom, creating a symbol of what freedom looks like, listing 3 things that you need to be freedom. 3 things that you can do in all of those being. And let that be your roadmap. And so rather than focusing on, the goal, and let that become consistent daily behavior.
Yeah. It's so much comes as from what you've said, so much realization around the stories I've created over the years to be who I am now. And when you're going back to being more authentic, it's you realize that those stories that you have created are nowhere near being authentic to you, but really what your circumstances have led you to create that story. So recognizing that's huge. Even when you're speaking, I'm nodding away thinking, gosh, all these things I do are really based on nothing to do with connecting with my authentic self.
And that's the thing. It all comes down to, in the book I talk about the 4 steps: connection, calm, clarity,
Yeah.
confidence,
Yeah.
right? So we have to first connect to that self.
Yeah.
It's like wanting to have Wi-Fi connection without, having anything connecting to Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah.
So we have to connect. We have to be connected to that self. And if we're disconnected from that self, we're run by ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I
that's all.
think,
I mean, I see that very simply. I look at life and like people, the majority of life, people, how they just live their life in their TikTok words, completely disconnected from this inner self.
yeah. And I think for people that are listening or watching, having a book, for me, I love books because I think you're able to reread chapters that you feel you need more clarity over, or you've got something there in black and white that you can resonate with and read and process, as opposed to someone talking to you. So anyone who has taken value from what we're saying but still feels lost with starting their own process, get your book, or even get on to speaking to you and having a consultation or a session with you, whether it's face to face or on Skype. Do you do Skype or Zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skype, Zoom,
Yeah.
FaceTime.
And it's something
Yeah.
that I think can really, explore all the options a person has available that they may not necessarily be aware
Yeah.
until now that we're talking about the authentic self, which is just
Yeah.
really so
Yeah.
important.
And, the book is divided into the ego and the essence, and then the self mastery, which is the
Yeah.
third stage, about the four questions that I call the happiness formula, that allow you to recognize ego that comes up and question yourself through that emotion and connect back to your essence.
Yeah.
So you're just navigating yourself through the fear.
Yeah.
There's two things that I want to say before we I'm not sure if we have to finish up yet soon, but
Yeah.
two things that I want to say that are really, really important. One is to be really, really gentle with ourselves, because obviously the ideal is, we're just going to stay consistent and we're just going to do our list every, this be, do, have model every single day, and life's going to be fantastic. But the reality is that we know it doesn't happen like that. Things happen, daily routines change, kids get sick, things throw us off our path.
Yeah.
And it's to be very gentle with yourself. So for example, I found myself last week on Friday, Melbourne was covered in smoke. I got really emotional about everything that was going on. I was thinking about the devastation. I was thinking about the animals, and I got myself into a real emotional state. And I felt like I felt myself really ungrounded. So I think when those days come, and I think it's important to know that they may come, you know what I mean? And we don't have to judge them, and we don't have to be scared of them, and we don't have to think that they're setting us back. But in those moments where we feel we have been thrown or we've lost our way, we need to know how to just sit with that feeling mindfully, just allow it to be, and to have that self-care rituals that just get us grounded again. Do you know what I mean? So for example, for me, it was like, I just made myself my beautiful magnesium bath, lit my candles, put my lavender oil in the bath, and I just let myself get in the bath. I let myself cry just to let go of the emotion. I let the magnesium and lavender oil just do their work.
Yeah.
And then I kind of next day, okay, let's get back to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's knowing that that doesn't have to stop us and take us off our path, but just, hormonally every month things can throw us. You know what I mean? So we have to know that when things come up, let's just be gentle with ourselves. Let's work through the emotion as it comes up. Have steps for yourself, the self-care rituals that just get you grounded and connected again. In the book, I call them the habits of connection. Know what your habits of connection are, and then know how you can just get back on your path again. So that's one thing I want to say, really important. The other thing I want to say with regards to fear is the biggest antidote to fear is action.
Okay.
Every time you face your fear, every time you honor that true self and you master that true self and you come from that essence and you express yourself or do whatever it is that the ego is stopping you from doing, every time you do that, you move past your fear.
Yeah.
and you develop new behaviors. And if we can be consistent in that, that ego self slowly starts to dissolve, and we start to see a diamond forming,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of polishing our rough edges every day,
Yeah.
not giving into them, looking at how we can work through the roughness when
Yeah.
it comes up. Look through the fear, go through the fear, even if it's painful, even if it's uncomfortable, have the conversations you need to have, do the action, follow through on what what the mind's so desperately trying to stop you and keep you safe, and bash through all of that.
Mm.
And you will continue to dissolve your fear.
Yeah. That's great. That's really important for people to know, I think, because we can sometimes get held back by our fears, and it can be debilitating. It can be physical. It can really
Yeah.
stop you in your tracks. But
Yeah.
like you said, the habits of, what was it called? The habits of
connection.
Connection. So creating various habits of connection to get you through those moments. And every time you push through, these
Yeah.
fears will naturally dissolve over a period
Yeah.
of time. Yeah.
Because it's not, people say, oh, well, you're a life coach and da 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 da. I have anxiety, right?
Yeah.
I've had anxiety since I was a young child,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I do what I do because of how I navigate my anxiety,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how debilitating that anxiety can be. And some
Yeah.
days it gets the better of me, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
It's the
And
nature
this
of the beast.
belief that practitioners or coaches that have everything sorted and everything's perfect is really quite ridiculous. No one on this
No.
planet is in that state. And we're, as a practitioner myself, I'm still always learning and working on various things that come up. And it's constant. That's why I do these podcasts. It's amazing
Yeah.
for myself what
Yeah.
information comes to me and helps me during my path, but obviously delivering this information to people that are viewers of the podcast as well. So I think this belief that we have this perfection or have it all sorted is
No,
is
and I
probably
think
so further from the
again that
truth.
comes. Well, I think that's an ego belief, again,
Yeah,
of needing
yeah,
to make that perception, because
yeah,
one of the things that we have to look at is something that the Mayans called our chiron, and our chiron is the inner wound that we all have, that we actually work through every lifetime,
yeah,
right? So, and this chiron is the life lessons that we're trying to master, and it's the innermost sensitive part of ourselves.
yeah,
And every single one of us have this, including the healers and the light workers and the coaches and the workers that are out there. And the best way to understand the chiron is that it's a wounded healer forever searching for ways to heal itself. And the people that step into the work of light workers and healing are simply just sharing the tools that they're learning along their own healing journey.
absolutely.
Right. But I think for those people that put themselves on a pedestal and say, well, I'm the guru, we have to question that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's
And
the human experience and there's a soul experience,
and
and we're all
even
working through.
I've come across patients who, maybe they've studied various things like holistic counseling, or they've done Chinese medicine themselves. And it's so interesting where they go, well, I need to sort myself out before I help anyone else. And I'm like, do you know how much sorting out I have done in the last 16 years of practicing? And I've got a whole lot more sorting out to do, because every time I am working on something else is presented and something else is presented. And if I stop myself from sharing what I've experienced and learned, well, then what's the point? No one's going to learn anything. We're all going to stay in this bubble of, I've got to attain this perfection, which really is unattainable. It's the beauty of identifying it. And even with you talking today, I've so many light bulbs have gone off in my head that I need to bring more awareness to, as opposed to thinking I had that all fine. And so it's been great. So I think if anyone needs a little bit of guidance in getting clarity around what their goals will be, and or what they want to achieve over the next year or decade or whatever it is, to definitely reach out to you and have a chat, and you'll help them through
Get
that
the book.
process. Get the book. The
There's
book's your
lots of
first step.
activities in the book.
Yeah. And then if you want that personal assistance, and then they can contact you afterwards as well. Thank you, Cheryne.
Absolutely.
It's been so good, so amazing, and I love doing these. You know, it's always a challenge as far as time, but when we can connect both on the same schedule, it's amazing what comes out of it. So I hope the viewers have, or the listeners as well, have enjoyed today's podcast. And you know, the Wellness Revival is all about getting that insight into making change for yourself and what do you need to do, and having those skills available to you, having people also supporting you through that process.
Yeah.
So I thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for creating this space. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So that's it for us today. I know we've gone over a little bit of time, but you know, it's really important to cover all areas and also understand what we can do to be a better version of ourselves. So any information, any comments, anything you need, let us know below in the comments section, or email me info@salubre.com.au. if you need any information of Cheryne, you can email me, or what's your email, Cheryne?
It's Cheryne@CheryneBlom.com.
Okay, so you can email Cheryne directly as well if you want details of her book.
I'll send the spelling to you.
So if Cheryne is her name, Cheryne Blom, Blom. Okay, so thank you again for joining us, and stay tuned for our next video in this special series of Salubrious Skin with Dr. Irene, the Wellness Revival. Stay tuned. See you later.
Bye.